This is chapter number 6, Towns, Traders and Craftsperson. Towns, Traders and Craftsperson. So what we are discussing here is what kind of towns were there, what trading was done, and which craftsperson or which crafts were pertinent at this time. Which time? We are talking about that 750 to 1750, that is around 1000 years, that is 8th century to 18th century we are discussing. So there are certain landmarks, because I will be talking about 12th century, 14th century, 18th century like this. So from 1000 to 12,000 is the previous or pre-medieval era. From 12,000 to 1526, this is the era of Delhi's Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate, we have Muhammad bin Tughlaq Alauddin Khilji. Then 1526 to 1707, Mughal Empire, Shah Jahan, Aurangzeb, Jahangir. So whenever I talk about 17th century, we are talking about 1700 to 1800. So I say 14th century, so 1300 to 1400. So which Sultanate was there, whose regime was there, whose empire was there, that will make various things quite clear. Contemporary thing. Okay. So in this medieval period, if anyone from outside, he comes to our subcontinent, so what kind of towns he will see? That is, there is a difference between a town and a village. That is, town or a city, Shahar, town, Nagar, city, I am taking it, as a one word. So in city, you will see more urban settlement, more houses, big houses. In village, there will be not high-rise buildings, but there will be houses, not very well-built houses. The city will have all the tradings, merchandising will be there in the city, and the transport will be very, less or very high in city and very less in your village. Okay. So when we talk about a town in the medieval era, what kind of cities were there? What kind of towns were there? So there were mainly 3 types of towns. The first one was the temple town. The town which developed because of a temple, or the town which was urbanized, or there was a urban sprawl because of the center point, key point as a temple. The second one is administrative town. What does administrative means in this context? Administrative town means, say if Mughal they have big empire, or any one you take, they have big empire. Now in order to take care of this big boundary, this big geographical region, there has to be some points called as the administrative points. So Delhi and Agra, if you talk about Mughal era, Delhi and Agra were the main administrative points. Okay. So these were called as capitals also, but they were prashasanic towns, administrative towns. And before I talk about the third, let me tell you one more kind of is possible: commercial, where trading is going on, where trade is going on, buying, selling is going on, exporting, importing is going on. So it's not a temple town, not an administrative town, but the main thing which is going is trading. That is the economy. Economy is the main thing which is going on there. So this kind of town where mostly commercial activities were going on, and this is called as port town. Because the third town which is coming is actually a port town, but it is not only the port town, it is also a commercial town. Let me show you here from the in our western part. Western ports, we have Surat, western port. If on the eastern port, we have Masulipatam, Surat and Masulipatam. So commercially, they were not only the ports, they were the entry point from the west and from the east, and they were also having a lot of commercial activity going on. Commercial activity, that is trading, import, export, coming in and selling out of goods, right? And there were different towns or cities, they were doing all the activities. For example, there were certain towns where have combined functions. That is, they were administrative towns, there were also the temple towns, commercial activities were also going on, craft means different sculpture being made. So I will talk about a place or a town in this 18th century, and before that I'll tell you about the centuries. I'm talking about Chola. So Chola dynasty, the capital was Tanjore, or called as Tanjavur here. Tanjore. Okay. So this is the Chola dynasty capital, Tanjore, and it was around thousands years ago we are talking about. And where it is located? Very fertile land, water-filled land, that is the delta of Kaveri river. Tanjavur was at Kaveri river delta. So perennial river it is, 12 months it has water. And then we have this Rajaraja Chola. Okay? Rajaraja Chola, he made a temple called a Rajarajeshwara temple for his god, for his deity called Rajarajeshwaram. Did you get the idea? All the names are same. Rajaraja Chola, Rajaraja Chola made Rajarajeshwara temple, RRV I am writing, for Rajarajeshwaram the god. He is devoted to. Okay. So this temple which you are witnessing is made by Rajaraja Chola. But who was the architect? The architect was Kunjaramallan Rajaraja Perunthacchan. Please, have a look. Kunjaramallan Rajaraja Perunthacchan. So how do we know this? Because he actually carved his name with all pride. He wrote it there that this is being architected, or I was responsible for the construction. And this temple is a Shiva temple. So we have a Shiva ling. Ling means the genital of different animals, you can say. The shape of that is here, Shiva linga. Along with this is not only about this temple. I'm trying to tell you how the town was a temple town, it was an administrative town, it was everything. So there were mandaps also, that is pavilions, or you can say a courtyard kind of place where the king would sit here. A king would sit or stay, and he is going to order or give the directions to his peers, to his subordinates. Okay? And there were different places where army used to stay, that is army barracks, Sainik Shivir. So in one town we have temple, mandaps, and we have barracks, almost everything we see here. Along with this, the same picture is all of Tanjore only. Picture is only of Tanjavur. So the markets were there, big markets, and they were selling different grains, food grains, like the wheat and paddy, etc. Grain was being sold, spices was being sold, cloth, kapda were being sold, and jewelry was sold. So water is there, but there were places where water was required, so the water was fulfilled by wells and tanks. The water was also coming from wells and tanks. Okay, wells means deep pit water, and the tank is a deep reservoir. So I am talking about Tanjore. See, this is also Tanjore. Every picture is of Tanjore here. Tanjavur, Tanjore. Now I'll tell you here about the weaver community, Bunkar community, and it was called as Salia weaver. Salia weaver. What are they called? Salia weaver. And this, along with there are a nearby town is also there, Uraiyur. There is a place called Uraiyur. This is very near to it. And these bunkars or the weavers, they were busy in making flags. So whenever we have a mandir or a temple, there will be a flag and also some ritual. Also, we need certain kind of cloth, religious rituals cloth. So that was especially for the festival, etc. They were making it. And they were also making the dresses for the king. That is, for a very fine cotton was used to make, or for the king and the nobility. But the coarse cotton was used for the masses, for the public, normal public. Mota kapas. So it was for normal public, masses, not for the king, because king and they were getting good cotton. So there is one more place, the question has been asked about this, Swami Malai. Swami Malai, if you see here, I am talking about Swami Malai. These Sthapatis in Hindi or Sanskrit, if you remember, it means Sthapit, means putting something or fixing something. So these Sthapatis or the sculptors, they are making what? Bronze idols, good quality bronze idols. And also bronze is tin and copper. If you combine tin and copper, bronze will be formed. Along with this, if you see any event or festival will always be started when you lit on a very ornamental bell metal lamp, that diya, okay, lit a light. So this and the bronze idols were being made near or in the place which is called Swami Malai. So a simple town was having so many things going on. I hope you got the idea. So business also and religious stuff also. Now coming to the temple town and pilgrimage center, I was telling you about the temple town. Tanjore is a temple town. The Chola capital at that time was a temple town. So Tanjore, it's a temple town. We have various temple towns that we'll talk about. And when you make a temple, the fine areas or the areas which are surrounding it, all these will be grown because of the urbanization to cater the requirements which has come from the temple. So this is how the urbanization take place. This is how the urban sprawl take place around the nucleus, which is your temple, right? The temples are responsible for, at that time, they are directly responsible for economy also and society also. Arthavastha and Samaj. So the rulers, they used to build temples. Why? Because they want to show power and they want to show the devotion to their deities or their god and goddesses. Devotion. And what they do, they also give a big land and money to the temple people or to the temple, because the money was given for what? There were various karma kand, rituals will be done, and in order to feed the pilgrims who are coming from outside for pilgrimage, then making preparation and management of food, then priest, if celebration has to be done like Mahanavami or Shivratri, so the people like pilgrims, they also come and give money. So pilgrims also give money. I'll talk about this bronze lost wax technique in the last. Okay, so I'm talking about temple authorities. Now the temple authorities or temple were the center one. So the authorities of temple or the office bearers, they would use this wealth or money they have, because they have land that will be produced, and that produce will be sold. so they'll get money. So they were actually utilizing this wealth or money where? For trade and banking. Trade and banking. Banking means some interest, give money and then get the money back with some interest. Right? So trade and banking was going on, and done by whom? Temple authorities. And this is all around temple. So all around the temple, the priests, the workers, the artisans, the traders, everyone who are going to cater to the needs or fulfilling the needs which has come from the temple or pilgrimage, these people come here and they start living and deciding. For example, take my example. If I have to go to this temple, so I am not from this shahar, town. First of all, I'll take train or a flight. Then I'll go to this place. I have to take a taxi or an auto. Then I'll go to a hotel. Then I'll go there, and here I'll do some rituals. So I have to pay some money. Then I come out. I'll take some souvenirs for my nearer ones. Then I come back. So there is a whole economy going on, right? There are so many people involved whenever I go and come for a pilgrimage. So at this time, certain towns were emerged like temple towns. This is called Vidisha, Bhillaswamin, Bhilsa or Vidisha. So three names, Bhillaswamin, Bhilsa and Vidisha, they are same. From between Jhansi and Bhopal, you will find it, Vidisha. And if you remember, our late minister Sushma Swaraj was MP quite a few times. Now on the right you see Somnath temple. This is at Gujarat. Gujarat Somnath temple, very famous temple. So here we have Vidisha, which is, you can, near this Bina and Bhopal in between. This is Somnath. This is Somnath in Gujarat. Okay. So these are two temple towns. Bhillaswamin or Vidisha, and second one is Somnath, which is in Gujarat. Right. Along with this, we have Kanchipuram and Madurai in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, I am going to show you two places, and Andhra Pradesh, I am going to show you one place. So in Tamil Nadu, we have Kanchipuram and Tirupati. This one is Kanchipuram, and if you see all, please watch this. These are temple towns. You can see various temples here. And coming to the downward, right down, we have Tirupati of Madurai, and here we have Tirupati of Andhra Pradesh. Let me show it clearly. This is Kanchipuram, temple town of Tamil Nadu. Kanchipuram, Tamil Nadu. Right? Then we have Tirupati, this is of Andhra Pradesh. Tirupati of Andhra Pradesh. Here we have Tirupati of Madurai. Tirupati of Madurai. So, just remember like this. If I take out mandir or temple from this town, there will be no value of this shahar or town. That is the temple town. If you see Uttarakhand, people come here for Char Dham, Makkah, Madina. People go there for Hajj. Right? So I'll show you a place now, Vrindavan. This is for pilgrimage. People used to come here. It's Mathura, Uttar Pradesh. Then we have Tiruvannamalai. This is Tiruvannamalai, Tamil Nadu. This is a place where pilgrims go. This is a place of pilgrimage. Vrindavan, Tiruvannamalai. People come from outside. And this Vrindavan for Krishna Ji, Krishna Bhagwan. Now coming to Ajmer. You see here, this is a shrine of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti Dargah. Shrine, Maqbara, you can call it as Dargah. So here, this is the Ajmer, famous, very famous, world famous in Rajasthan. Here we have Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti Gharib Nawaz. He came in Ajmer 12th century, at the end of this 12th century, and then when he died, this was made. And everyone of this country, no Hindu, no Muslim, Everyone believes in this Dargah. And just near that there is Pushkar. Pushkar is a very beautiful place. It has a lake and there is a Mela. One Mela, Pushkar, and where overseas people come. So I'm talking about Ajmer, 12th century, and it was basically the capital of Chauhan kings, Chahman kings. It was the capital of Chauhan or Chahman kings, Ajmer, which is Rajasthan. And after this Mughal, overpowered them, it became the headquarters, Suba headquarter. Under the Mughals, this Ajmer became Suba headquarter, right? So this is how the importance of Ajmer was always there. And then came Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. And when he stayed here, this whole area is only known for Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. If you take out this Dargah from Ajmer, there is nothing. There is nothing, right? Then we have Pushkar. We have Pushkar. This also attracts pilgrims. It's a very beautiful, nice place. So I am taking now the network of small towns, okay, and then big towns also. We will just talk about network of small towns and big towns, okay. So let me take you to the 8th century. From the 8th century, means 700 to 800. This subcontinent, if you see, there are dotted towns being shown, which are small towns. And these small towns, they have actually come out of large towns. In these towns, we have Mandapika. Mandapika is nothing but Mandi. Mandi is where the people would come from outside to sell their produce. Everyone will come to this mandi. Whatever they produce, they would sell it. So Mandapika and mandi are same, and still till date in 2021 we have the same name as mandi. I hope you got the idea. Mandi is where the produce are sell. It was called as Mandapika, and still the name is mandi only. And then there are market streets. If you see this picture, are street market, SM. So there will be a street, and in this street we have hatta or hart or hatta. There will have different shops on the road also and on the side of the road also. So this is the hatta. Today it is called as hart. So if there are different streets where different kind of work is being done. For example, some were working artisans, potters, some oil pressers, some were sugar makers, some were making the tadis or toddy makers. It's just a wine from palm tree. Then we have smiths, then stonesmen. So there are different streets where different people were working, or they were combinedly working or finding the job. So these were different traders also who lived in town. And in this mandi, people from not only from the town, from outside town also, they will come. In the road also, if you see here, trading is going on and on the side of the road. So this is all about selling and buying. So horse, salt, camphor, saffron, betel nut, pan, and spices. For example, the pepper. So people would come here to buy it. This may be a local article which is not available outside, somewhere where there are other people are living. So that is how the people would come to Hart, to Mandapika, Mandi to buy different stuff. And there is one more thing, as I told you. Let me just discuss it and then I'll go back. This is bronze bell metal and the lost wax technique. What is this lost wax technique? First of all, bronze is an alloy and it is made up of copper and tin. So copper combined with tin will be bronze, and it has a very sweet sound. If you see the bells of a temple and the Girjaghar, they are made up of bronze only. in Chola dynasty, these sculptures, statues, beautiful statues were being made, and the lost wax technique was used. How do they made it? First of all, first they make this akriti or a statue using a wax. You know, your birthday, you always use that candle that is made up of wax. So this wax is used to make the initial statue, right? Then it is covered with the clay, mitti, covered with clay, and then it takes the shape of the wax, and then it is dried up. Then there is a hole being drilled, small hole, and then it is being heated. So when it is heated, all these wax would come out. This wax would come out. Only the internal shape will remain hollow, and from this hole only the liquid bronze is sent inside. So the hollow place is filled up by what? By bronze. Okay, this is how the bronze is filled up in this region, this area. Okay, and then after this clay is broken, and finally it is being cleaned and given a shape, a beautiful shape, which is lost wax technique. So I was talking about these towns. So the earlier Samans, which became zamindars later on, normally, gradually what they will do, they will make the town fortified. That is kilabandi they will do. And whichever people are there, like the traders, artisans, or the articles, trading articles, they will levy taxes. They will force taxes on it, right? Because it is being fortified. Now they are under their control. But they'll do, because the Samanta and the Zamindars were making their own temples, local temples. So what they will do, they will hire these people, or they will give the right of taking the taxes to these local temple people. And now these temple people will be taking the different taxes from different people, and this is quite being recorded in an inscription. We have a proper proof that in sugar, jaggery, dyes, thread, cotton, coconut, salt, this areca nuts, butter, sesame oil, cloth, everywhere these taxes were levied on the markets, being taken up from the people who are in temples. This is an inscription of 10th century, inscription from Rajasthan. Okay, so almost on everything the tax was levied. So now we will talk about the traders, big and small. So Nagar Vyapari and craftsperson we are trying to understand. So we came here at traders. What about big and small? Because Vyapari or traders also we are talking about. What are traders? Those who take one product and sell it. That is, from where they can get in a low price, they sell it in another place or the same place with some profit. So we'll talk about Banjaras, and the Banjaras will take some stuff from one place, go to other place where it is expensive. Horse traders, at that time, they would form associations. What is an association? That is, whosoever is doing this work or related, they will make a group, a samuh, and they will choose one of them as the mukhiya, headman. So whosoever is coming, like the headman is coming, this headman is going to deal with this warrior, means who is coming to buy the horse. So this group or guild or association, samuh, group, one person will be the headman. So this is because of the common interest, because everyone is doing the same job or related to the same job. So they form a guild. So the most famous guild, or you can say the formations, guilds in the South India. So the name I am telling you, about the guilds, very famous, especially in the southern part, is Manigramam and Nana Desi. So these are Samuh, these are association, these are groups of combined, interest people. Manigramam, Nana Desi. So they were doing this trade where? In the peninsula region. What is peninsula? A part of a land which is surrounded by water from three sides, right? So first is the peninsula, they were doing all these trading. Also Southeast Asia and China. Southeast Asia means the part where Thailand, Burma is there, and China, of course, you can see. So they were doing immense, extensive trading, not only in the peninsula or Indian region or subcontinent, but also Southeast Asia and China. And there were other communities, they were trading communities only, means buying and selling the stuff with certain margin of profit. So these are Chettiars. See, these are Chettiars. And the other one were Marwadi Oswal. Chettiars and Marwadi Oswal. Okay, they were big communities, big communities. And one more thing, this is Gujarat. You know, always we think that Gujarati people are born traders. They are born traders. So these Gujaratis, Hindu Baniyas, I'm talking about Gujaratis, Hindu Baniya, along with Muslim Bohras. What are these Muslim Bohras? They are Muslims, but they have, a different community of traders. You see here, they are very famous. They are very famous. So they were doing these Baniyas and Muslim brothers. So they were doing trading various areas like Red Sea, Persian Gulf, East Africa, Southeast Asia, China. So all these areas which I am pointing about, these all were, Hindu Baniyas and Muslim Bohras were trading. And what were they trading? The question will come like this. What is important in India and Indian subcontinent? Textiles and spices. Masale, textile and spices. So these were, specifically we were talking about these ports. And through these ports, things go, through these ports, things will come. That is the exchange. So when they go with textiles and these spices, what do they get? They get gold, or they bring gold and ivory. Gold and ivory, these areas are having a lot of gold along with the elephants. So Hathi Daat. So ivory, gold and ivory, they used to bring from Africa. And along with this, because there are different spices in different other countries also. So spices they were getting, the tin also they were getting. We talked about China's blue pottery in the earlier discussions. So blue pottery Chinese they were bringing. This silver from Southeast Asia and China they were bringing. This is again Southeast Asia and China, which I talked about the previous one, like the guilds were doing this trading. Now this coast is very important. West coast is very important. Why it is important? Because all these Arabs, the Persians, Parsis, the Farsis, the Chinese, the Jewish, Yahudi, and the Syrian Christians, Keralite Christians are Syrian Christians only. All they were coming or entering or leaving on which port? The left port, that is the west port. So the Indian spices and cloth are very important because these are all being sold here. Please remember, Indian spices, cloth, and they were taken by whom? The Italian traders. And the Italian traders would take it, and this is the rasta, this is the path I am showing you. So Italian would take it and then they would sell it to Europe. Europe is a very big market for these people. Okay, so we are coming in which zone? 8 degree we start, that is we are in tropical region, and the tropical climate we are rich in spices. So tropical climates, Ushna Katibandhiya Jalvayu, Ushna Katibandhiya. So we get what? Spices. We have pepper, kali mirch, cinnamon, dalchini, nutmeg, that is jaifal, dried ginger, sont. All these were very important and they were very important part of European meal cooking. Why? Because this European area is quite cold. Cold. So that is why, and cotton cloth also. People used to wear cotton cloth in this the region. So two things: cloth, cotton cloth, and the spices were becoming very important. That is why the European wanted to come here, and that is how the East Indian companies of various different European countries, they came here in search of spices, doing trading, etc. This Kabul and Kandahar we will talk about. Kandahar was earlier called as Gandhar, which we call earlier. Now let me talk about Kabul first. Actually, I am talking about whole Afghanistan. This is actually a very rugged, mountainous landscape, very undulated. But still, the place where it is very strategic. You know, it is related to India, related to China, Russia, the Middle East. That is why it was so strategically important. So that is why we are talking about Kabul, and that time also it was very important. Specifically, if I talk about 16th century, commercially very important. Trading was going on through this in Kabul and around Kabul and through Kabul. So first of all, the Kabul and Kandahar, they were in this Silk Route. Gandhar, as I was telling you. So they were linked to this Silk Route, which was very famous Silk Route, the trader carrying silk. Along with this, trading of horses were going on. Horse trading, this point was very important. So there is one person, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. He's the person I'm talking about. Now he actually wrote that in 17th century, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, he was actually a diamond merchant. He was himself a diamond merchant. And he said only the horse trade at Kabul was 30,000 rupees. 30,000 rupees at that time, which was a very heavy amount. It was a big trade. And along with this, most of the things coming from this part to the subcontinent, Kabul, etc., like chilgoze, dried fruits, dates, khajur, carpets, carpets, kaleen, silk were coming. Even the fresh fruit were coming. Fresh fruit, it was also coming from there, from Kabul. And one more thing is the slaves. The slave trade was, slave trading was going on there. So that is how Kabul has a lot of importance. Coming to crafts in town, what does it mean? Means people who are skilled, they are doing craftsperson. So if you go to Mandir say, and you have a very good craft here. So what this kind of craft, if somebody says, oh, this is a candle stand, so you will buy this in order to use this candle stand, right? So I told you about candle because this is a candlestick. This is a candle stand, and this is made up of brass, a very fine craftsman or shilpkari, and this is also an example which I am showing. So I am talking about a very specific place called Bidar. And in this Bidar, this craft was so popular. The inlay work in copper and silver, the work which were done in copper and on silver, it was called as Bidri. Okay? In Bidar, it was called as Bidri. Along with this, there are certain people who are working. Panchals and Vishwakarma, they were called as. These are the community, Panchal and Vishwakarma. They were goldsmith, working for gold or working in gold. Bronzesmith, कांसे का काम करने वाले, blacksmith, लोहे का काम करने वाले, masons means those who were doing the Rajmistri, and the carpenters working for lakdi, wood, and they were not only important for building of temples. They were not also only making temples, they were also making the palaces, construction of palaces. These all are important for making big buildings, for tanks and reservoirs, water storage, etc. So these were so important, Panchals and Vishwakarma. If you remember, I told you about Saliyar weaver, Bunkar, Saliyar weaver. So this Saliyar weaver, or you can call them as Kaikolars, Kaikolar. Saliyar and Kaikolar, they became so important, they emerged as so prosperous community, they become so important. They were doing, or they were giving donations, money to the temples. And because Saliyar became so Amir, the other work, they were doing all the work, but now the cleaning, spinning, dyeing, all the cloth related work or textile related work, all this cotton related work, cleaning, spinning, dyeing they were done by different communities now. They became independent crafts. Not one craft as Saliyar and Kaikolars were doing, but now they are independent crafts. Now, let me tell you about the different cities also. Like let us talk about Ahmedabad. Now, this Ahmedabad, which is in Gujarat, and this went to become a very big city, like the Surat became a very big city, commercial city. Trading was going on, the Arthavastha was very good, the amount was, per day amount was too high. But the Thanjavur, which we talked about, which had a very, important, status, this Thanjavur normally or gradually shrank, it declined. I'll tell you one more place, Murshidabad. And Bhagirathi is nothing but Ganga only. Here it is called as Bhagirathi. So the silk work at Murshidabad was so famous, it was so in demand that this Murshidabad area was made as the capital of Bengal in 1704. West Bengal capital Murshidabad was made in 1704. It's not 1707, it's 1704. Okay, I'll change it. And gradually it declined. Murshidabad declined because the weavers, they faced competition from the England manufactured stuff or the cloth. So they could not stand it because they were making by hands. They don't have machine. So that is how finally Murshidabad declined and Calcutta became the capital of West Bengal. Now I'll talk about certain, because we just talked about certain cities which came up and then declined. So there are cities, they achieved their success at certain age, certain era or certain Shatabdi. And the Hampi, Masulipatam and Surat we are talking about. So let us talk about Hampi. Hampi is or was the Rajdhani capital of Vijayanagar Empire, Vijayanagar dynasty. Hampi, very famous place. Now this is a fort and one burj or one tower, watchtower you are witnessing. One watchtower you are witnessing. So here people would, it means the soldier would stand and they will watch. So this is a watchtower. In this fort of Hampi, there is in a fort there is a tower. Now these are all the pathars or big rocks. And how is the construction went? See, Hampi, if you see, there is a river. The river is called Krishna. The other river is called Tungabhadra. So in Ghati, Tungabhadra, Krishna Ghati, Hampi is located. And basically it's the center, it's the nucleus of Vijayanagar Empire, Vijayanagar dynasty. And Vijayanagar dynasty was founded when? 1336. So it was the center point of Vijayanagar Empire, Vijayanagar dynasty, and was founded in 1336. 1336. So this is a well fortified city. And the rocks, as I said, they were not having any cement or in between some mortar to join them. Okay. So how are they standing? If you just push them, they will fall down. They will not. Why? Because I'm just taking two of them. I'll show you how they are being made. They are logged. They are logged like this. So it's interlocked. These two or these different were interlocked. Over, below, left, everywhere. So this is how the construction was made, through interlocking. This fort, this is also a picture of interlocking. So now the Portuguese traveler, which is Domingo Pais, his name was, see, remember Domingo Pais because his name is popular, Portuguese traveler. So he described Hampi as a well fortified, he just gave good word about the masonry, very good other parts which we just talked about. The architecture was different of Hampi. It was quite distinctive. See, if you see, this is a rath. This is a rath, and this is a stone chariot, or at Vithala temple, and the Vitthal temple. And this Vitthal temple, this is at in year 50 rupees. Okay, and there were big, huge buildings, royal complex having very big splendid arches, domes. These are domes, pillared halls. So all the rich sculptures were there. Okay, rich sculptures, and well planned orchards and pleasure gardens with lotus and corbels. This is a corbel, doda. In Hindi it is called as the doda. So all these were there. Along with this, I'm talking about 15th, 16th century. This is the time when it was at the peak. Hampi bustled with commercial and cultural activities. All the activities, commercial means the money related, and the cultural, Sanskritic, all these things were going on at this time, 15th, 16th century. And the Moors are who? Muslims. So these all Muslim merchants combinedly called as Moors. These Moors and the Chettis and different European traders, all these agents of these traders were there in the market. Means all were filled with these people. The market of Hampi was filled, especially European traders like Portuguese. And these temples, if I show you these temples, these were the center point. These were the hub of nucleus of cultural activities. And here we have Devadasis. Devadasis are simple dancers who dance in a temple. They are devoted, dedicated to the Bhagwan, to the deity. Right? They were Devadasis. And they will perform the dance before whom? Deity means Bhagwan, royalty means the Raja, king, and the masses, other people. In a very this deity, royalty, and masses. So Virupaksha, that is a form of Shiva. This is Virupaksha temple. Okay, so I'm talking about Virupaksha temple. And the Devadasis would dance in front of all these important people. Along with this, there is a very famous festival, Mahanavami, also called as, at that time, called as Navaratri in the southern part of India. So Mahanavami and Navaratri were most important, and actively people used to follow it and enjoy it. So this is a place called Mahanavami platform Hampi. The king would stay here, and the archaeologists have found this place specifically. So all these things, these activities were going on. The Raja or king will honor the guest, accept the tributes, and also those people who are sitting, they would want dance, the music performances, and the wrestling, Malla Yuddha. All this, for certain things like dance, music, and Malla Yuddha, they would enjoy at this platform, Mahanavami platform of Hampi. So finally, what happened? Hampi, because Hampi is situated near we have Bijapur, Golconda, Bidar, Virar. All these were different, you can say Deccani sultans. So it was engulfed by them, and finally, because they were constantly attacking Hampi, so he lost to Deccani sultans. Let me tell you again: the Golconda, the Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Berar, and Bidar, all they were attacking, and finally 1565 I'm talking about, it lost its shine, its valor, and what all we talked about just now. Okay, Gaurav. So we talked about Hampi last time. Now we are discussing about Surat. Surat. This is the place we are talking about. I'm talking about Indian subcontinent, the west side or the west coastal area, Paschimi Ghat, a Paschimi Tat Rekha, western coast, and this was a very important city right now also. And this Surat is in Gujarat, where it is in the state Gujarat right now. And this was called as Emporium. Why it was called as Emporium? This is a place where everything, different type, diverse type of things are produced and are being sold. So it's, if you go to electric shop, you'll get only electric items. But Emporium, you get everything. Same is true with Surat. So buying and selling can be done in this place, Surat, Gujarat, in Gujarat. So if I tell you why it is so important, first of all, the western part of the world means this is a khadi, this is a Khambat ki khadi or Cambay, you know, the Gulf of Cambay, and this is a port city. Please remember, previously we talked about temple city. This is a port city because it's a port. As I told you that Vijayanagar, Hampi was a temple city. So this Ahmedabad also, along with this Surat, these were very important cities at that time, and they were gateways. They were the gateways, and especially the Surat was gateway for all these parts. Just imagine India. After that, we have Pakistan, Afghanistan, then we have Iran. So if you see there is a Gulf, UAE and Oman also you are able to see. This is called the Strait of Hormuz. This is Gulf of Hormuz. So there was a proper trade going on. Okay. So it's West Asia, of course, via the Gulf of Hormuz, and there are different places also where this trade was going on. So this Iran, UAE, Oman, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So one more thing was Saudi Arab is here only, and Makkah, Medina is also here. So the Indian Muslims who were going for the Hajj, they take ship or they sail from this place only, where Surat. That is why it was called as Gate of Makkah, Gate to Makkah also. Okay. So the pilgrimage, this was a point from where the pilgrims go and come. And this is a cosmopolitan city. Now you talk about Delhi or Mumbai, they're called as cosmopolitan. Why they're cosmopolitan? Because here everyone is living. Every caste, every creed, every religion, rich, poor, everyone is here of different nationalities. Cosmopolitan. So when I talk about that era, 17th century I am talking about. So who were there? They were Portuguese. They were Dutch, Holland, Netherlands, they are same. They were English, and all these have factories. And whenever there is a factory, there will be warehouses. So they will have factories and warehouses at Surat. All these Portuguese, Dutch, and English. So remember these three country name, because they are going to come again and again. So they were having factories and warehouses. That all points to the trade. So this man which I am showing is called, basically he is a English chronicler. Chronicler means in chronology, the people who write in chronology the events, different events. So he was a chronicler, Englishman, English chronicler, and his name is Ovington. What is his name? His name is Ovington, and this person has given the account of Surat. He told that in 1689, so all these, the port around that, lot of ships, more than 100 ships were there. 100 or more ships were anchored there, standing there. Okay, can you imagine? 100 at that time, at 16th century we are talking about, the 17th century. So anchorage, more than 100 ships were anchored there. And retail and wholesale shops are there, lot many. From where you take a very huge number of product is the retail is which is near your house. But from where the most of the stuff is made and being sold, it's called wholesale. So what? Cotton textiles. These retails and wholesale shops were of cotton textiles. Cotton textiles. Kapde ke liye we were very famous. So cotton textiles, right? And why it was famous? Because it has a special gold lace border. The textile will have a very glowing gold colored or gold lace border, zari ka kaam, and it has great market in West Asia, Africa, Europe. That means this was so famous in this West Asia, Africa, Europe. I'm just showing you that. Just imagine that this part of the world, and West Asia we have this, Europe. All these have requirement for the zari. And Surat was filled with rest houses, hotels, because people were coming from different nationalities and trading. So everything was there. So I'll tell you two names. Kathiawar Seths. Kathiawar Seth means people who have money, who can lend money. So Kathiawar Seths and Mahajans. Mahajan also are the same thing. Means they were a different caste, but they were also the rich people who can lend money. So they were Kathiawar Seths and Mahajans. They were changing the money. Right now, you come to India, you change dollar to Indian rupees, and same way you go outside, you change things, money to dollars. Same thing, money changing was going on. And who were doing? Kathiawar Seths and Mahajan. Basically, they were doing banking. It was so respectable city, Hundi. It was famous. And what is this Hundi? If you go anywhere, mostly I'll tell you the places. These Hundis were honored. And this was like a traveler check. That is, if you are going to say Egypt, that is Cairo in Egypt. If you go to Basra in Iraq, if you go to Antwerp in Belgium, Antwerp, diamond carving work is very famous for this Antwerp. So either you go to Cairo, Basra, Antwerp, these Hundis were honored. What does it mean? That is, you are going from Surat, say. Now you have say 100 rupees. So is it advisable to take this 100 rupees along with you? No. You pay 100 rupees, you are given a paper, and that paper, that dastaveez, that document is called Hundi. Now you take this Hundi, you go to say Cairo or Basra, and then you take this Hundi and show it to those people, and it's so famous and honored. They know that it has come from Surat. It is no illegality and it's not fake. So they give the money, and 100 rupees you are going to get from there. So you don't have to take money. You just take traveler check. That was Hundis. So Surat, the way Surat began to decline at the end of the 17th century. That is around after 1660, you can say. Now there were various reasons for this. First of all, Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire was also on downfall. That is why market and productivity, it went down. The trade game is all about market and this productivity. So the market, first of all, and the productivity, it went down with the going down of Mughal Empire. And second thing was the sea, the coastal area or the sea routes were dominated by the Western countries, to name it Portuguese, right? And I'll tell you one more name, the competition from Bombay. Bombay was there because Surat was facing competition with Bombay. And what is this Bombay? Bombay is the English East India Company's headquarters. They shifted it in 1668 and now it grew, Bombay. So there was a fierce competition from Bombay which Surat was facing. That is how the problem of this productivity and market and Mughal Empire problem declining, and the Portuguese and they took over. That is, the sea ports or the coast were all taken up by these Portuguese and English, and fierce competition with the Mumbai, right now Mumbai, Bombay port. So this is date is 1668 when English shifted their headquarters to Bombay. Okay, but the Surat is still a commercial center. It has not declined that much. But this is not true with Musulipatnam. Musulipatnam is, if you go now, it's Jarjar. It's all finished up. It's just like any other city. So I'm talking about Masulipattnam or Machilipatnam, and this Masulipattnam is also called as Machilipatnam. And if you see Machilipatnam, that is, Machili means fish, Patnam means port. So this is a town which is a port town of fish port town. So Machilipatnam actually literally termed as fish port town. And where it is? It's in the delta of Krishna river. This is Krishna river. So it's in the delta of Krishna river. Machilipatnam, Krishna river, delta. You have to remember this. So 17th century, it was a center. Lot of things were going on. Intense activity. I'm talking about the 17th century, right? So why it was being made or understood as a very, very intense activity city? First of all, the Dutch and English, that is both the East Indian companies of Dutch and English, they wanted to control Masulipattnam or Machilipatnam, because on the left coast they already have Bombay, Surat, etc. Now they wanted to cover the eastern port also. For that, what to do? So they wanted to grab the control, and the important port on the right hand side, which you see here, that is the eastern coast, was in the Andhra coast or Andhra Pradesh coast, was Machilipatnam. Okay, Andhra Pradesh, we are talking about AP, and this is the important port on the eastern side at that time, and it was Masulipattnam. This fort is actually being built by whom? Dutch, Netherlands or Holland people, Dutch, right? There is one more thing. William Methwold, he talked about the poor fisher town, and William Methwold, he was a gumashta, he was a factor, means he was being sent by East India Company. He is one of the employee, you can say, of East India Company. East India Company representative or worker, means good worker, a good post worker. So he wrote that this city was actually poor. You know, there were ships, there were activities going on, but it was not being built as the Hampi was being built, or even the Surat, you know. So he mentioned everything. Now coming to Golconda, I'm talking about Golconda now. So Golconda, the Shasak or the rulers were called Qutub Shahi rulers. So they did what? They imposed all the because textiles were there, spices were there. They put all the taxes or took the monopoly of selling these textiles, spices, in order to prevent what? The East India Company, because East India Company was growing very, very stronger and they were controlling everything. So they don't wanted that to happen. So they tried to grab the control of all these selling and buying. So there was a competition, fierce competition among various trading groups. First is Golconda nobles, Persian merchants, then the Chettiars, I told you about Chettiars, Telugu Komati Chettiars, and then the European traders, all the Dutch and Portuguese and English, French. So there was a fierce battle between them. And this is how this Machilipatnam, Golconda became very populous and prosperous. I'm talking about Golconda now. Prosperous and very, very, people, you can see people there at that time. And, a good city, a very nice people, wealthy city. But Mughal, they wanted to grab the power of Golconda. So they sent their representative, Governor Mir Jumla, Mansabdar, Mir Jumla, governor. But Mir Jumla, he was a merchant. He was actually a merchant, Saudagar. But what he did, he created fight between Dutch and English. And what happened eventually when Dutch and English came face to face in 1686, 1687, Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, he took over Golconda. He annexed Golconda, right? Now this caused this because Golconda and we just talked about the Machilipatnam. Now the European company thought, oh, we have to go somewhere else. So they had a new policy. What was the policy? They wanted a city. It has to be political, means political work can be done. Administration work also needs to be done. It has to be a commercial city. Trading should also be there. And it has to be a port city also, because entry exit is coming or through the port cities only. So all these they wanted in a single city. That is how right now we have Mahanagars, metropolitans. What are they? Bombay, Mumbai. Then we have Calcutta, that is Kolkata, Madras, which is today's Chennai. Okay, all these cities went up, and Machilipatnam slowly it declined. The merchants and prosperity, they just leave or whatever happened in the course of 18th century. So if you go, it is in Jarjar Avastha, dilapidated, not in a very good shape if you go to Machilipatnam. Now coming to new towns and trades, I'm talking about 16th and 17th century. Means 1500 to 1600, 1600 to 1700. So the European countries, they were doing what? They had a taste of spices and textiles. Indian textiles and spices were worldwide because we have tropical atmosphere, environment, so we get spices. And this was very famous. So the English, the Dutch, the French, they all formed their East India companies. All companies which are trading with us. They wanted to expand or elongate the commercial activities to the east, that is to our subcontinent. Initially, what happened? We had Mullah Abdul Ghaffur. We have Mullah Abdul Ghaffur and Virji Vora, right? So they had ships, not that much, but they had ships. So they posed competition to these all European, which I named, naval companies, or you can say the trading companies. But they had so much of naval fleet power, so many ships with cannons, naval power that much. Neither Ghaffur Saab nor Vora, they couldn't stand them, and finally they only became as agents. All the trades. So finally these Indian traders were just like agents, and all these European people and companies, finally what emerged? Who emerged? English emerged as the superpower. Though which power? Commercial power as well as the political power. Commercial as well as political power of this Indian subcontinent. Who? English. And we know the rest is history. 200 years they were ruling us, more than. So 200 years. So what happened then? Now, one more thing I would like to tell you, because textile I talked about, because of these textiles, because they were so growing in demand and there was a lot of demand, so people left their other jobs, or you can say more people joined this job of spinning, of weaving, of bleaching, of dyeing. Means all these work which are related to textiles, people mostly they came and tried to do this job. Okay. So, but there was a problem here, craftsperson, because English came and there was this craftsperson they actually lost their independence, freedom. Why? Because the English people, or you can say the craftsperson, were working for English agent, the company's agent, and British agent or company's agent, and they would take money in advance. That is, the money for the work they take in advance because they needed, they were poor. Now, this money when they get, they have to work only for these agents. Whatever agents say, because they have taken their advance. So whatever they do, they would do it for the agents. Whatever pattern they are being told, they will do it. You have to do this, you have to do this. That means they don't sell, won't sell, they can't sell. Design they cannot sell. Means they are not independent. They just have to work for these company people. Okay. Now there was in 18th century, it was a rise of it. I talked about Bombay, Calcutta and Madras. Still they are the metropolitan. So there was a rise of, in 18th century, rise of Bombay, Calcutta and Madras. So those who were the merchants, that is the traders, and the artisans, basically like weavers, bunkar. So what these English people did, they marginalized it, or they put them in just one part of the city, and that part is called Black Town. For example, Muslims and Dalits, right now what we do, we just push them in the corner of the city, right? So the same thing happened with the weavers, like artisans, a general word, and merchants. So this city, small city in that city, is called as Black Town. Black Town. You know Black Town? So there is a picture also, if you see, the Black Town I showed you of Madras, right? And these Gora or Britishers, this is the Black Town I'm showing. These Gora people were living in a very good locality. For example, in Madras, they were living, or they had their house in Fort St. George. If you assume it to be Calcutta, they were having house at Fort St. William. So these were very, good places, lively places, and they had, this is specifically about, I'm talking about the picture. If you see, this is a Bombay street of early 19th century. That is, you can say 1800 and plus. Now let me talk to you about Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus. How these English people knew that we exist? How do they know that they have a sea route? So Vasco da Gama came here in Calicut. Where did he came? Vasco da Gama came to Calicut in 1498. Calicut is in Kerala. So Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and this is Christopher Columbus. There are two pictures. So the Vasco da Gama, he was a Portuguese, and Christopher Columbus was an Italian. Vasco da Gama is Portuguese and Christopher Columbus Italian. If you just need to remember it. Now I'm talking about Vasco da Gama. So what route he found out? He actually he actually discovered the route. First of all, he's a Portuguese sailor, so he sailed across the Atlantic to the African coast. He went around it, crossing over the Indian Ocean, and he took more than 1 year to do this. And he reached to Calicut in 1498, I told you, in Calicut, and that is in present day Kerala, right? So in 1498 he came. Then it was, very bad journey, because 170 people were coming and only 54 survived. All other died. He came up with started with 4, only 2 ships remained, all other died, all other wrecked down. And the rasta, the way, the route he discovered, English, Dutch, French, they followed it only. Okay, English, Dutch, French followed these routes. That is why it is important. Now coming to Christopher Columbus, he said the earth is round. So now Vasco da Gama has gone this way, I'll go another way, and I'll go another way, and I will definitely reach India. But he started from here and he came to West Indies. He came here, and then rest is he came, we know about what happened in America, how it was being found, and started with the West Indies. So West Indies, he came and he tried to find out the other way of India, and he discovered this West Indies. So this is all about this chapter. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself. There he lost.